All right. Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Um, Thanks for picking this solution session to spend your time with today. Switching from on-premise to the cloud, Hyperion Planning and Essbase to Planning Cloud and Enterprise Data Management Cloud. Uh, Somebody must have asked to speak to the manager about all those abbreviations and so we're back to saying all of the real words now, mostly. Anyway, this is essentially Noble Energy's Oracle EPM story. And I'd say it's kind of a love story because I really now strongly prefer cloud to the on-prem versions of these EPM applications. Um, my name is Stephanie Kohler, and I'm the team lead for the Enterprise Planning Group at Noble Energy. And partnered with me today is the famous author and architect, Ellen. And acknowledgement up top, um, Chevron officially completed its acquisition of Noble on October 5th. I'm a little bit anxious and kind of in limbo for the time being. So trying to stay positive and just enjoying the content at Solutions this week. For the purposes of the content in this presentation, I'm going to be referring to myself and to Noble Energy as though we could rewind back to before the acquisition was announced. And I hope that won't be too confusing. I just want to be very clear that this is Noble pre-Chevron. All those question marks are there because I don't yet know if Chevron will be offering me a job. And that QR code to my LinkedIn profile is there because I don't yet know if Chevron will be offering me a job. So we'll go to something fun. Back in 2007, these are your presenters in 2007 and in 2020 with our little ones. And somehow they're just not so little anymore. That's me and my son, Nate, on the left, and Tracy and her daughter, Reese, on the right. And that photo of Nate and I was actually taken at Epcot right before Solutions 2007 started. So kind of fun. Okay, back to EPM. I want to start by highlighting our team members at Noble and beyond that helped us achieve success. My team is made up of myself, Jody Marlowe, and Nutan Goganini. Between the three of us, we have about 50 years of EPM experience, and quite a lot of that time has been spent serving in the oil and gas industry. Also, we have our business partners in corporate finance. Their sponsorship of these efforts, along with their support and cooperation, were essential to success. Last but not least, our implementation partner was Interel, and Interel takes collaboration to the next level. CISA and Tracy have been such amazing partners to us, and I've been so pleased to work with them and to have been introduced to even more members of the Interel team through the projects. Noble started using Essbase for planning about 18 years ago, and in 2008 supplemented that environment with Hyperion Planning, which together supported best practices planning and budgeting. And on-premise, DRM is used to manage large and complex hierarchies for both planning and Oracle EBS. After years of growth and change, this environment became incredibly slow. Teams spent a lot of time waiting for aggregations to finish. A lot of late nights were spent on reconciliations and slide preparation. Confronted with these challenges, we looked to EPM Cloud Solutions to help us solve problems and decode complex business challenges. Our finance folks had a nearly impossible task of mining for data across multiple systems to answer very important questions. And I think this is a very typical challenge that finance groups contend with. Lots of data, lots of systems, some data needing to be scrubbed or aggregated, and some data could only be pulled at certain times of the day. So there are a lot of pitfalls and potential points of failure. We discovered some of this dysfunction as we looked to map out our current planning processes and proceed with the cloud implementation of planning and budgeting. We couldn't address every issue with this single project, but we had a good start and created a roadmap for some of those challenges that we could take on in the future. This is where we've been, where we are, and where we wanted to go. I'll focus on 2 through 5, which will cover our PBCS pilot for Noble Midstream, the ARCS implementation, the corporate planning and budgeting cloud project, all the way to some of the enhancements we've completed this year in 2020. Number 6 on this chart is not likely to unfold the way we envisioned it last year, but I'm not going to skip it because I think following our next steps thinking is a valuable insight. And I think we scoped out some pretty cool ideas for bringing even more value to our users. In 2018, my team was challenged by our leadership to move planning and budgeting to Oracle Cloud, and we did not want to fail. We wanted to build an application that would kind of have no real consequence if it didn't work out. So the idea of a pilot or a prototype was born. Noble Midstream Partners is a master limited partnership that Noble Energy, as the general partner, owns about 60% of. The rest is owned by investors or public unit holders, and many of Noble's midstream assets in the DJ Basin and the Delaware Basin were spun into this organization a few years ago. Noble Midstream Partners continues to own, operate, and develop those midstream assets, and that provides value back to Noble and to its limited partners. I know it's kind of confusing. These are 2 separate companies. They're even traded on the stock market separately, but Noble's corporate finance, corporate accounting, and IT teams all operated as shared services organizations to Noble Midstream Partners. The same arrangement is now in effect with Chevron after the change of control. Still 2 separate companies with a majority owner, which is now Chevron. Back to the pilot. The finance, what was that?
That was me. I apologize. I forgot to turn the ringer off. Sorry.
That's okay. The finance folks dedicated to midstream only were putting their forecast into Excel, and Noble would upload that to planning. So we knew we could improve on that. We partnered for the first time with NRL, along with midstream and with corporate finance, to implement planning using the financials framework. We created straightforward financial statements and took the opportunity to help midstream frame the data in the way that they ran their business. For upstream, we're focused on projects, wells, and completions. But for midstream, it's about services, gathering services, freshwater delivery. These are what they term as segments. And selfishly, we also wanted to learn as much as we could about EPM Cloud and how it's different from on-prem so that we could execute a high quality solution for Noble's corporate planning team. We think this effort went really well. We delivered a central planning solution for midstream that got them mostly out of Excel. We sourced actuals from the Financial Accounting Hub, which was a cloud-to-cloud integration. We use data management to help us create midstreams, define segments, and use business rules to help us manage ownership percentages, which can fluctuate and have a big impact on the planning process. We use the financials framework to design a simplified balance sheet and direct walk statement of cash flows driven by our operating revenue forecast. And we got a ton of exposure to cloud tools, like using data management and the simplified user interface. So we all felt better prepared to design the corporate planning application. The pilot helped us figure out what we definitely did and did not want to take into that future endeavor. Also in 2018, our corporate accounting group partnered with a GL/IT team and Proficient Consulting for the ARCS implementation. I was not a part of this implementation, so I'm not going to pretend to know much more than what I'm showing you on this slide and the next, which I borrowed. It is interesting to me, kind of looking at these pain points, to see how the transformations for planning and budgeting and account reconciliations were similar. Lots of manual processes relying on anecdotal, non-auditable data, lack of centralization, and not being able to see your data real time. These were all things that we were struggling with. The ARCS implementation also was successful. ARCS was directly integrated with our general ledger and automated some painful and time-consuming processes. Moving our corporate planning application to the cloud ended up being a pretty easy decision. The system was on older servers, the application was unpatched and versions behind. Most of the business rules logic were a decade old, and it took over a half of a day to aggregate and then would freeze and crash on occasion. Corporate finance tried to make their lives a little easier by creating workaround processes in Excel, which less than ideal and, you know, a tale as old as time. Our FP&A group had at any given time a staff of between 3 to 5 people, but it doesn't matter how many bodies you throw at a problem if you're sitting around waiting for the application to calculate so you can do your job. Because of this clunkiness, finance would never run more than a single scenario during a forecasting cycle, which seems crazy in an industry that lives and dies by commodity prices. We envisioned our cloud planning application would be a fresh start. Start with fresh team, fresh eyes, translate those Excel workarounds into business rules. We wanted cloud-to-cloud integration for actuals with Financial Accounting Hub and to eliminate the alternative accounts roll-up that was being just for finance. This was 100% an internal effort our team took on with finance and the GL team. And the time invested to do this was well worth it. So at the end of the day, accounting and finance were using the same P&L hierarchy, which is crazy and awesome. And we needed performance, so our finance folks could focus on the value add work they were hired to do. We could build the application with the latest technology in a reliable environment, and it would be fast. It would be a tall order, but we wanted this application to aggregate in seconds and consolidate in minutes, not hours. And we wanted to get the ability to sandbox additional cases for both corporate finance and the business units. I'm now going to throw this over to Tracy to talk a little bit about how we approached designing, scoping, I guess, the design of this utopian planning application.
So one of the things that we did when we tackled the project is we knew very early on we didn't just want to migrate over the old stuff. We really wanted to go back and start fresh. And so we went through what Interworld calls an ideation phase, which is a combination of requirements, design, and prototyping. To really flesh out what the design should look like, what the solution should look like. So we held a lot of meetings with business users, asking lots of questions about current processes, pain points, and then asking questions, what are you guys doing? What are the manual steps you're doing? Walk us through your process so we could figure out what could we automate, what could we build in the system so that the solution would just do that for them. We evaluated pros and cons because there are different alternatives in how we could have implemented the solution. And so walking through that with the Noble team to figure out what was the right solution for them. We created a lot of prototypes and then we reviewed those prototypes with the different users, the business units, corporate finance, to make sure so they had something tangible that they could see and say, yes, that's what I want it to look like. That's what I want it to how I want it to work, so that we really could then just jump into the build process and execute. So this was definitely, I think, a critical piece to being successful is making sure we stopped and we took time to really go through a very diligent process and understanding what do we want this future state to look like. And then as part of Interworld's job, helping to educate Noble on the art of what's possible, best practices, pushing back occasionally, are we sure we want to do it this way? Or how about we do it this way? But really coming, kind of a partnership to come to the end of the road with the right solution.
So some of our guiding principles in this journey were simplicity, transparency, and accountability. We wanted our P&L forecast to be driver-based wherever possible. Volumes times price equals revenue. Enter a percentage correlating to ownership of assets that are co-owned to calculate LOE cutbacks. Keeping it simple drives accountability back to the data you build your forecast on. This doesn't mean we don't have some straightforward ways to add judgment or topsides, because we definitely do have that ability. But the spirit of the application is rooted in transparency. We became aware of how differently the onshore and offshore business units were managing their forecasts. Onshore's planning is very tied to managing their data at a well or field level. Offshore efforts like Leviathan and Tamar in Israel and Alin and Alba in Equatorial Guinea, they're very different. It's managing a project, a very large project. So managing the business doesn't neatly equivocate between these two types of businesses on an enterprise scale. Offshore finance wanted a little bit more granularity to be able to manage big projects. So we created 2 planning cubes with differing levels of detail. We gave offshore more detail into their operating expenses, as well as more detail at the entity level. We created forms for each of them that they could navigate to in the planning web interface. Tracy's going to jump back in to talk about our approach to design a simplified balance sheet and direct walk statement of cash flow.
So part of what we wanted to do was, again, automate a number of the processes that were being done in Excel offline, which included balance sheet forecasting and cash flow. So with Planning Cloud Financials module, it delivers pre-built logic that you can take advantage of to build in your cash flow forecast. You can either use the indirect method or the direct method. Well, we at Noble, we actually kind of took a hybrid approach. So for the most part, we use the direct cash flow time timing so that users, the corporate finance could take the forecasted revenue and expense that had come through with the plans, apply some cash flow timing assumptions. So if we thought revenue was, 60 days out, 90 days out, 30 days out, they could apply those timings and actually have timings for different scenarios to kind of see what the cash flow impact would be. And then it would calculate the balance sheet based on kind of those influx and outflux of cash flows. And then we actually pulled in some of the indirect methods to calculate actuals cash flow so that users could then do, reporting side by side from a cash flow standpoint. So it was great to leverage pre-built functionality, within the solution. And then we could even tailor and add in a few manual Noble specific requirements into the mix where we needed it.
In this project, we had to decide what role DRM would play in data governance. We were deploying most of our dimensions to on-prem planning with DRM and EPMA and pushing out our large entity dimension, or RC, to EBS and the Financial Accounting Hub. Fun piece of trivia, that dimension, the RC dimension, is over 600,000 nodes. And I keep getting told that is very big, that's a lot. You can see the flow of RC does not originate in DRM. It actually originates in P2. And we derived a unique benefit from DRM when it was implemented. We took the recursive hierarchy that existed in P2 and created a tree-based hierarchy in DRM. And this was done by creating derived parent entities. This created tremendous value in the support of reporting out of EBS. And we just weren't able to achieve the same result with EDM only. We integrated most of our dimensions from EBS to EDM, but we still run RC through DRM, and ideally in the future, this would all be in DRM. But again, at the time of implementation, the technology was just not quite there yet. We do our planning not unlike most organizations at a higher level of detail than we receive actuals for account and for entity. And one of the benefits we get from EDM is that it manages the mappings for that low level of detail to that higher planning level of detail almost seamlessly. So for example, if I'm planning a forecast to a field level, I might have 200 wells that roll up to that single field. EDM keeps track of that relationship by inheritance down the hierarchy. And we just pull those relationships into data management. OneCloud takes care of the formatting requirements needed to update those dynamic mappings to data management. And it also helps with scheduling these events. So these updates can occur overnight. A few key stats coming out of this project. The planners have a pretty big chunk of time to submit their forecast, but once pencils are down, the clock is running for FP&A to aggregate and make high-level decisions. The changes the process that includes slide preparation and that aggregation, it's down significantly. In fact, if there's just a small change like a global pricing change, all of these processes can be completed in a couple of hours. Calcing everything, or what Tracy calls the Big Bang, takes less than 10 minutes. So the application is in place. We're achieving stability and getting high praise from our users. We all congratulated ourselves and patted ourselves on the back, and then NRL rolled off of the project. As often happens in dynamic corporate environments, Noble realigned internally. At the end of last year, some organizational changes moved our corporate strategy group into FP&A. With these groups now under the same leadership, we had a crazy idea to try loading our long-range plan into the application we had just finished and delivered the previous year. So this year in 2020, my team started and completed adapting the application for a long-range plan, a plan that extends out 10 additional years. No more mapping the budget data into the long-range plan. We're all using the same hierarchies. The previous method of aggregating LRP data had a severely long cycle time, and putting that data in planning just added a couple of extra minutes to our calc times. With this data all in one place, our entire finance organization had access and could pull the LRP data into their retrieves, and this was very, very well received. Fun fact, this functionality is being used right now, post-acquisition, by the legacy FP&A team. I'm not going to talk too much about the benefits of cloud in terms of support of the application, because I think that's well-trodden territory at this point. Having data aggregated so quickly and delivering it in the same way it was previously in SmartView was a tremendous benefit, and not much training was required. Having that data customized for onshore and offshore really helped with the business unit's ability to work with that data the same way they ran their business. We achieved so many of the goals associated with our guiding principles. We significantly improved the application's speed, agility, and ability to adapt and change. We input data in a straightforward fashion with driver-based forecasting and can consolidate quickly while still meeting the needs of different parts of the business. And how did we get so fast? You keep hearing it's just planning in the cloud. We were lucky enough to get to use the planning hybrid functionality a little bit early. Hybrid has been available in Essbase for quite some time now, but it's a newish concept to planning in the cloud. And I'm going to let Tracy talk through how we tested hybrid in planning at Noble and our truly rock star results. My favorite slide.
So it was really exciting. Interrail works very closely with Oracle, and a lot of times we get to preview features, functions, and kind of test out and provide feedback. So hybrid was one of those, and that was right about the time that we were in ideation. And so we asked Oracle, okay, and we asked Noble, hey, we want to test out the application, kind of some of our prototypes in this new hybrid world in Planning Cloud, and the results were crazy. The cube size shrunk significantly. Data blocks reduced database size. You guys see some stats here, 90%. And then the calc time, the aggregation and calc time down 80%. So we knew when we were prototyping, we knew that this was going to be a real game changer as far as getting kind of some of those instantaneous calcs. We heard that, the big bang is under 10 minutes. Well, that's kind of like the full process start to finish. When you just are, aggregating maybe your P&L, those things are super, super fast. Sometimes cash flow and balance sheet could take a little bit longer, going through some iterations and some other dynamic calcs there. But we saw some really significant improvements using hybrid in the cloud. And what I would recommend for you folks that you're evaluating, you guys are wanting to move from on-premise into the cloud, hybrid is something you need to have somewhere in your to-do list to take advantage of, because you can achieve some really great benefits for your users. The planning cycle, administrative time, all comes from this hybrid perspective. So we were super excited that Noble was open to kind of testing it early. So I think we even got like an early version of the release that supported hybrid, and then we were off and running and did not look back after that. I will say we did go through different design iterations. So again, there's not a hard and fast rule of how you design for hybrid. So we did do different scenarios, and you'll see we kind of tested with a custom application. We tested with financials. We tested with a customized version of financials. We also went through iterations of testing, everything being dynamic, just part of it being dynamic, so that we found the exact right kind of sweet spot for Noble's application. And that's something that you guys will go through as well. I know that Glenn Schwartzberg, I think he has already presented on kind of hybrid tuning tips and tricks. So if you missed that session, again, it'll be recorded, and that'll have a lot more detail kind of behind the scenes on how we achieved results like this.
Yeah, I like to tell this story because Seattle last year, I was in Glenn's session, and he was talking about hybrid, and I'm like, what's there new to say on it? Started seeing the slides, I'm like, that's our data. Like there were some things that were kind of anonymizing the company, but I was recognizing, I was like, that's us, we did that. So very, very, very exciting to be on the forefront of that. So, all right. Another cornerstone of our success was our cloud-to-cloud integration for actuals, and the credibility that brought to the and automated. So one less thing to manually administer. We successfully implemented EDM to manage our mappings to data management while still holding hands with DRM to administer that RC hierarchy to sources other than planning. So what's next? Seriously, if
Oh, Stephanie, are you there?
and they're on the phone, let's unmute their mic.
You might have blipped for 1 second, Stephanie. So are you
okay.
there? You can hear?
I'm here, yeah.
You may want to turn off your camera, and it may help with bandwidth. It's been great the whole time, but it just blipped for just a second there.
Let me do that.
So everyone, hold 1 second. We'll continue with the remainder of the presentation. We'll give Stephanie just 1 second. Stephanie, are you there?
Yeah, is this better?
Let's see. Can you talk a little more?
Better.
Your voice is a little lower.
Okay, I'll increase my volume. I can't figure out how to get rid of my face.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. I think it's on the stop video. Sometimes that seems to help with the bandwidth on Zoom if there's a stop
I'm trying
video.
to do it on the host side here, and it's not working either. So we just might have a bandwidth issue with Stephanie, but as long as we can hear her, we can keep going.
Yes.
I'll increase the volume of my voice, and hopefully that will be helpful.
Yeah.
I was imploring anyone who knows anything about...
Tracy, we can't hear her really at all.
So Stephanie, can you switch back to whatever you had before? I think that might have been better. And what we can do, let's see, I think I actually had the next 2 slides. So let me see if I can share.
Yeah, Tracy, you do.
Okay.
I'll drop off and rejoin.
Okay, perfect. And then I'll keep going. Ali, is there a way for you for me to speak? I mean, to share my screen.
Yes. Yeah, you should be able to, as long as Stephanie stops sharing.
Share. Oh, can you do this as the organizer and kick her
Yeah.
off? Thank you, everybody, for being patient.
We just need Stephanie to stop sharing. Unfortunately, I can't even share over the top of her for some reason.
And can you kick her off the meeting and then she can join back?
Let me try that. Okay, I was able to stop her sharing, and I think she just exited. So you should be able to bring your presentation up, and hopefully she'll be back on in just a second.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So, so if we talk about what's next, so again, Stephanie's going to come back and she'll talk a little bit about the kind of the roadmap and what was on the to-do list from a Noble perspective. But as you guys know, and she said, Chevron has acquired Noble Energy. So, so things are a little bit up in the air. The one thing that I am hopeful for them is that Chevron recognizes that there's a lot of opportunity to take advantage of some of the things that Noble has done with the cloud. So whether it's using enterprise data management to map Noble's chart of accounts into Chevron's standard chart of accounts, being able to create reporting cubes in the cloud and be able to do consolidated reporting and analysis. Noble, has access to strategic modeling as part of their solution. So again, kind of in the scenario planning world, taking advantage of the technology to do scenario modeling, faster integration. So again, they're going to need to have consolidated results, leveraging data management. And then again, OneCloud provides a number of different benefits from a kind of business user automation integration standpoint. And then of course, streamlining the account reconciliation process. So I think things are a little bit unknown. Let me get to my screen where I can move down the page. There we go. So here's, and then just the one example, and again, a lot of different opportunities that could happen, but one thing that's powerful, and if you guys are in the place where you have multiple chart of accounts, where you have, you're an acquisitive company and you're acquiring and you need to integrate data in, EDM is a great tool for being able to manage kind of the mapping of different companies' chart of accounts into a central chart of accounts. It's just one of the use cases and features, but we've got a number of customers that are using this today to manage those mappings. Then those mappings can be exported out. We pair that with data management or another integration tool, and then you can map data in from a consolidated perspective. So again, this is just one opportunity. We're not really sure what will happen, but it is exciting that Chevron will have a whole host of tools that they could take advantage of if they so choose. So now we're going to talk about, I'll kick it back to Stephanie, and you guys can, you can kind of lead us through some of the things that were on the to-do list and what you guys were looking forward to pre-acquisition.
Okay. Sorry for blanking out on you like that. It was perfect timing though, because you did have the next two.
Yes.
Yeah. Agree. Such opportunity there. And I truly hope we get an opportunity to demonstrate some of that value. So back to what we might have done to take our environment to the next level. In another universe, of course, I just love seeing updates like this. Something that's not just a little tweak, but actual cool new functionality that Oracle said they would give us. Auto Predict was just released in August, and I think it would have been a lot of fun to demo this new feature to our business partners in finance. You want to advance? All right, awesome. We love the idea of creating dashboards and infolets tied to this planning data for its visual impact. There's so much to do in this space with tools that we already have. And with a little bit of scoping, I think we could have brought a new dimension to analyzing planning data. And that could potentially shave off even more time from slide preparations. Our users right now, they just don't think there's anything better than SmartView. So I think it's our duty to tackle this challenge. Strategic modeling was packaged with legacy ePBCS, and I'm not sure how this is rolled out now in terms of purchasing it, but the strategic modeling functionality definitely caught the eye of our friends in the corporate strategy group. And we think maybe in another world, there'd definitely be more to look at with this project. And lastly, I think if we'd had a phase 2, this would have been it. We would have pursued an internal effort to align the property ID number that comes from Aries to the report center that gets created when we open an AFE. This may sound easy, like, why aren't you already doing it this way? We scoped this out, and the concept of having a unique identifier was achievable, but it would be challenging and involved a few intense but palatable transformations. Imagine if you could observe an asset throughout its entire life cycle, from theoretical to spud, and then through that asset's maturity and decline. You could truly interrogate every aspect of that planning process and fine-tune it. Up the game with intelligent process automation, and you would be truly leading the pack on managing razor-thin margins and offboarding underperforming assets. This is dreaming pretty big, but at a very minimum, this kind of insight would open the door to some really cool reporting cubes that could provide a better understanding of well-level analytics. So I think that is it. Thanks for picking this session and sticking with me with the technical difficulties. I hope that wasn't too distracting. I'm sure it was, but thanks for sticking with me. I love telling this story and letting you see from one customer to another how real enterprise level transformation can be a game changer. And I was going to do this, oh, how did this slide get in here with all my personal contact information? But I'm just not that slick. So if anyone is seeking EPM Cloud Implementer, been there, done that, or wise old EPM Sage, or if you just want to contact professionally, here is literally all of my personal contact information. So thank you. And Q&A?
Yes, so looks like we have a couple of questions. So one question, was the need to still use DRM in conjunction with EDM due to the node volume, functionality, or both? And I don't know if you want to take that one or if you'd like me.
Yeah. Okay. Was it due to the node volume?
It was not the
No,
volume.
it really wasn't. It had to do with the derivation of parent entities that was done in DRM. It was not related to the nodes. We could not with EDM do the same thing at that time. Again,
At that time, yeah.
At that time, things are different now. I think as Edward mentioned in his opening remarks this morning, EDM came out in 2018, and we were first adopters. We had challenges, to say the least. So we just weren't able to achieve that same benefit of derived parents. So I don't know, how familiar you are with Oracle EBS, but the hierarchy is you know, you've got parent entities that can be booked to in the general ledger. Now, what do you do with that value when you want to aggregate stuff up? DRM created those parent entities. It was like the report center number underscore, you know, parents, you know, I don't remember exactly what the nomenclature was, but created a new entity and made that gorgeous tree hierarchy that when you went to run a report out of EBS or planning, because we're using it in planning as well, it was just so nicely stacked there. And I think they were handling that before, maybe with some XREF tools and, you know, not dynamic. So DRM just still kind of, you know, it's a little bit of a workhorse. It's very dependable. And I think that the solution to offboard DRM would come from new functionality that's been introduced with EDM patches and or another partnership with OneCloud.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we, at the time of implementation, EDM was first out. It was definitely kind of in its first iterations of release. So if we were doing this today and starting the implementation today, it could be a different story, right? So there are a number of the features and functions that we kind of needed that DRM was doing. EDM just didn't support in those early releases, but a lot of those things have been added in. So we now have derived properties. We've got more control over kind of exports and imports and combining hierarchies. Subscriptions has really evolved and developed. So it's kind of one of those things that was just at the time what made sense and what was available. And again, today that might be a very different story. Another question, so somebody noticed on my hybrid slide, they saw that we had increased query times, right? That were up by 100, but in one case up 200%. And then they're like, have users complained about this? And I'm like, well, definitely. So what I would say is some of the times that we had snapshotted on that screen, that was from our like prototype testing. So like in real life, what we did was we designed so that we balanced the calc time and the query time. And we understood what levels are users frequently reporting at, and we made sure that those levels would retrieve back fast. So there's no issues with retrievals. Everything is really fast, but you were correct, and that was a good point. There's a balancing act when it comes to hybrid, because the more you make dynamic, the longer that could take to retrieve. And so you have to find, you know, what makes sense. So in real life, you know, we kind of found an optimal balance and mix of, you know, keeping our calcs fast, but still keeping retrievals. So again, that was kind of a snapshot of the different prototypes that we did and the different testing. So it kind of helped us fine tune and figure out, because we didn't want to have a 200% increase in time. But like oftentimes with your query time, if you know, if it takes 0.25 seconds to retrieve, and then that goes to 1 second, that might be acceptable, right? So some of the percentages also when it comes to query times are a little bit misleading, because oftentimes query times were, you know, really, really fast, and so it slowed down a little bit, but, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it was something that was still consumable by users. So hopefully that makes sense. Another question is, how did you use OneCloud? So Stephanie, I'll let you take that one. Some of your favorite features of OneCloud.
Yeah, so I called in another presentation from Tuesday, like it's a Swiss Army knife. And I think that they've just released even new functionality that may help streamline some of the integrations with data management, which is also very exciting. It's, you know, it has connectors like pre-built into some of these applications where there wasn't any real native out of the box something with parity. And so, you know, OneCloud would do tedious, complex, just, you know, really nasty file manipulations but they were file manipulations that were repeatable. And so we created, you know, many processes that would reformat files to be taken from EDM over to data management. And then we use it to schedule things like run in the new month of actuals. And we didn't get too much into the whole multi-cube thing, but we've got schedules that push data from one cube to another, kind of behind the scenes. And it's just very visually oriented and easy to work with. And the folks that work there and the technical staff are extremely accessible. We've never been able to kind of unwind something that maybe happened with a new release. Usually an Oracle release would break something with one cloud, but they were all over it, and I consider them to be you know, another excellent partner for us. So did I hit everything, or?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely was the tool that supported, because we were kind of an early EDM adopter. The few things that EDM didn't have a feature available yet, we were able to, you know, kind of supplement that with the one cloud feature. So that was helpful. Kind of the two together really created the, you know, no more manual processes, everything automated across all the different systems. And then just having a GUI interface to manage all of your automation scripts from a support perspective, just much easier for the team to learn and support.
Yes, yes, yes.
So the next question, and I'll take the first pass at this, and then Stephanie, I'm going to let you add into it.
Okay.
In the end, did you use the financials module or did you customize it?
Customize.
So what we did, we implemented the financials framework for midstream, and I think what we learned in that process is that there were some things that they liked about the financials framework, but there were some things that they really wanted to change and kind of simplify in the process. So what we ended up doing for the corporate application was we did do a custom cube, but then we actually pulled over the logic that we wanted to use. So whether it was trends and the trending functionality, or we pulled in the cash flow. And so we did use a lot of the financials module. We just didn't actually enable it within there in the cube. We kind of created our own custom cube, and then we just pulled over the pieces that we wanted, which is a great lesson learned for folks. And again, I'm a strong proponent of the financials model. It's great. But then if you decide and you have some very specific requirements, and, you know, we had a very kind of opinionated, strong, dominant corporate finance group that knew Excel. They'd been working in native Essbase and planning for, you know, the 20+ years. So they wanted to see their dimensions, their hierarchies a certain way. So we delivered that, and then we just brought over the financial logic, the logic that and pre-built artifacts and those types of things. We kind of just, you know, brought over what we wanted from the financials model and then customized the rest. So Stephanie, I don't know if you want to add to any of that. Stephanie, are you there? You may be muted, or we might have lost you again. I hope not. All right. I think, Stephanie, we might have lost you, but thank you so much. If you can hear us, you know, it's a really good story. It's a great migration story, you know, of what's possible, not just lifting and shifting, taking time to kind of redesign, rethink, re-implement to have a better process, taking advantage of the available technology, and showing, you know, that you can use the pre-built components when you want, you can customize when you want. Again, kind of the timing of when we implemented, I think, you know, how things were designed. Now EDM supports a whole host of features. So, you know, a few of those things would have been a little bit different, but I do think we're now, you know, they're now set up to the stage that if we were kind of a future phase, could potentially be migrating the DRM portion of the RC hierarchy, build hierarchy, and pulling that in. So with that, if there are not any other questions, I don't think I see anything else. So I think that's it. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.